Well, I was born in 1957 and turned 6 in 1963. And I integrated Fifth Avenue School here in Huntsville and became the first black child to integrate the public schools in the state of Alabama on September 9th, 1963. I feel like integrating the schools helped me a lot later on because I had a chance to go to some better schools with better facilities and equipment, and I think that helped to prepare me later for taking advanced math classes in high school, for example, and then being able to qualify to get into the University of Notre Dame later on, where I learned a lot about science and mathematics there, did a lot of programming there, and that really laid the groundwork for my professional career, programming, software design, those kinds of things. Most of my STEM professional experience has been computer programming, but not just that. I've been able to use a lot of my mathematics and physics background. For example, when I worked at GE in Schenectady, that was my first professional job. That was back in 1979, started in 79. And I got a chance to, the area that I worked in was a manufacturing area, and they needed a software system to analyze some quality control results. And they knew it was going to take 2 or 3 months for the software people to develop that. So in a couple of days, I wrote a program that did most of what they needed done. Wrote it in Fortran, that was the language back then, and that program they used to analyze the QC results until the real program got put in place. So that was one example. Also, later on, I had a chance to write some software for NASA when I worked at NASA, some software to analyze experiment data that was coming down via the TDRS satellites. And the person who had that job to actually analyze that data had to do it manually, had to look at columns of information. Actually, it was just like an 80 column piece of information and go through there and pull out the important information and then manually draw graphs to show when the experiments were running, when the data was coming down, what the results were. Well, I looked at that and I said, that can be automated very easily because the manual job was very tedious and error prone, but with a computer, of course, it got it right every time. So in about a week and a half, I wrote a program to analyze that same data and chart to make graphs of the information. And that person still thanks me to this day for automating a process that she had to do manually. But I've also had a chance to write some simulation software for missile interceptor programs. There was going to be a missile test at one point. I was working at Lockheed Martin. There was going to be a missile test out at Kwajalein, but all of the equipment had not arrived. It was not delivered in time to support this test. And I told my manager that I could write some software to simulate that piece of equipment that was missing so that it would receive the inputs from the previous piece of equipment and then do the processing and then pass the outputs to the next piece of equipment. And so I did that, and we were able to, I got a chance to fly out to Kwajalein, which was nice. Got to spend some time in Hawaii. But we were able to go ahead and run that test, and it was very, very successful. So I've had a chance to use a lot of my math and physics background and really enjoyed, I think computer programming is what I've enjoyed most during my career. Unfortunately, after you program for a while, they want you to become a software designer and manage programmers, and that's not as much fun as doing the actual programming yourself. Science and math, those things came pretty easily to me. And like I said, having a chance to go to some better schools prepared me for, by the time I got to Butler High, let's say I started Butler in 1972 as a 10th grader in 1972, but it allowed me to take an advanced math track once I got to Butler, and that really helped to prepare me to go to Notre Dame. When I got to Notre Dame, I was taking calculus, and I was competing with some kids who had had 2 semesters of calculus in high school. So I was at a little bit of a disadvantage, but my advanced math and trig background was good enough that it allowed me to hang in there and to compete with those kids. And that really prepared me for a technical career, a scientific and technical career. Well, Dad really enjoyed mathematics back when he was in school. Now, he had never gone as far as calculus, as far as taking calculus, but he taught me a lot about math, I mean, at an elementary school level. For example, he showed me how to use a slide rule. Now I never actually had to use a slide rule later, but learning the concepts of how they worked and all, and it was just interesting to me. It was fascinating to me, and so it just sort of gave me an enthusiasm for mathematics. So, but Dad really enjoyed that stuff, and even though he got a medical degree, he was a physician, never had to take calculus. So, he could only kind of take me so far as my mathematics. And by the time I got to college, I guess I had passed the furthest that he ever made it in math. But he had instilled in me that enthusiasm for math and that appreciation for math, to the point that I sort of developed some theorems when I was a kid that later on, when I took algebra, I said, "Oh yeah, that's the same thing that I discovered 5 years ago," or something like that, about math and about algebra and that sort of thing. But that started with Dad instilling that understanding and that appreciation for mathematics in me. Well, I think it's better than it was when I was a youngster. And I was thinking back when I was I think a sophomore at Notre Dame, for example. I was in the electrical engineering curriculum, and I think there were about 70 or 80 of us in electrical engineering, as I recall. I think there were only two or three African American men and one African American female in all of the electrical engineering program. And I know the numbers are a lot. I don't know exactly what the numbers are now, but I've talked to some professors over the years, and I know that it's a lot better. But I think today the teachers are better about encouraging students who have the aptitude for that sort of thing to go ahead and pursue that sort of thing. And I sort of compare it to, again, when I was a youngster, I know that a lot of times girls were not encouraged to do math or science. And I've heard stories about girls who were told by their parents that, no, no, you're going to go to you're going to take secretarial training and that sort of thing. Well, I don't know, I can't say for sure that that happened with minorities, but I can imagine that there were situations where minorities were discouraged from pursuing that. I don't think that's the case anymore. But one of the things that I think is a tremendous help is if African American adults, professionals especially, would do a lot of tutoring and mentoring. Now, I've done a lot of that over the years, going back to, I started a tutoring mentoring program out in Triana, which is 90 something percent minority population. I've tutored and mentored at, well, what's now Holy Family School. It used to be St. Joseph's School. That's where it was, St. Joseph's when I went there. Tutored and mentored at the local Catholic high school that we have many years ago. And now I'm tutoring and mentoring at Sonnie Hereford Elementary School here. And I think it's really good for minority students to see other minorities who are in technical fields and doing well in technical fields. Now, I think anybody who's interested in tutoring and mentoring should do it, but I think it has more of an impact when there are minority professionals who participate in those kinds of programs where there are a lot of minority students and they can see the success of pursuing mathematics or pursuing physics or computer programming, that sort of thing. So I think that's one of the things that we could do today that would really help to instill that love for technical subjects in minority students these days. Well, another thing, I think back to my own childhood, being exposed to space, being exposed to the space program. And, I think the Mercury program ran until about 1963, as I recall. That's when I started first grade. So when I was a grade schooler, I paid a lot of attention to the Gemini program and then the Apollo program. And that really, got me excited about space and about wanting to do technical things. And I guess I would say, too, having a telescope, something like that, being able to do things with a telescope, and even science fiction. making sure that kids get exposed to things like that. I think that can fire kids up. And even though obviously a lot of that is fiction, but a lot of that comes true in the future, and I think it can help kids to dream and to be inspired to try to do technical, scientific types of things in school and prepare for those kinds of careers.